I would like to show you one of my favorite attacking games of the strongest female player ever, Judit Polgar. Retired from professional chess years ago, but she was so incredibly strong. She became a grandmaster at the age of 15. She's the only female player ever who broke into the world's top 10, and she was known for her fearless attacking style. And therefore, I would like to show you the following game she played back in 1996 against a very good player, Russian player Vladimir Apishin. It was a rapid game played in Geneva, Switzerland. And look what's going to happen now, because you are definitely going to enjoy yourself. And of course, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you would like to see more attacking games from Judit. Now, she opens the game with one e4, c6, d4, d5. It's the Caro-Kann defense. She goes for knight c3, d takes e4, knight takes, knight e7. Very solid line, which was a favorite variation of Anatoly Karpov, former world champion. And interestingly, Vladimir Apishin, the black player, was for many years Anatoly Karpov's second. So definitely interesting game to watch, also from a theoretical point of view. Bishop c4, the bishop is actively developed. Black goes knight gf6, challenging the knight on e4. And white goes knight g5. You're thinking, what is the knight doing here? Well, if black is careless and would play the move h6, attacking the knight, it's bishop takes f7 with checkmate. Of course, that's not gonna happen at that level. e6 on the board. Black covers the f7 pawn. Queen e2. Also a typical move in these positions to threaten some sort of sacrifices on e6, either with a bishop or taking with a knight on f7. So black doesn't want to allow this kind of business. Plays here the move knight b6, attacking the bishop on c4. And at the same time, the bishop on c8 protects that pawn on e6. So the bishop goes back to b3. And now you shouldn't be too greedy. Don't take that pawn on d4. It's a poisoned pawn, because after knight 1 to f3, you're attacking the queen. The queen gotta go away. And then it's knight e5. The knights are coming in. And all of a sudden there are huge problems once again with that pawn on f7. So the pawn was ignored. Black played here the move h6, attacking the knight first. And now knight comes back, protecting the pawn on d4. And at first it seems like white is very comfortable. Black's position is cramped, especially with that bishop on c8 being boxed in by its own pawns. So black tries to break free with c5. Bishop f4. Now you don't really have to fear this pawn on d4. Let's say if you take it, you're gonna castle, and white is looking for great attacking chances along the open file, trying to put pressure against the queen. So bishop d6 was played, offering the exchange of bishops, and now white could have taken on d6, but decides to drop back with the bishop to g3. Queen c7, deviation from an earlier game of Garry Kasparov against Anatoly Karpov, in which queen e7 was played, but queen c7 looks very logical as well. D takes c5, queen takes c5, castling queenside. This is where you would like to have your king. This is what Judit Polgar is always looking for a way to sharpen the game. Now, of course, the threat is to take the bishop on d6, and very likely black is going to castle in the opposite direction, and then you get a sharp game. Who is coming first? Bishop takes g3, h takes g3, opening the h-file, capturing towards the center. And after bishop d7, you're thinking, what are you going to do with this knight? So I think a lot of people would assume that white's going to play knight e5, followed by the other knight coming into f3. That looks very solid, reliable way of playing. But Judit has a different plan. She plays here the move rook to h4, original way of getting the rook into the game without moving that knight from g1. But of course, at some point you would need that knight to join the action as well. So what is the advantage having the rook on h4? Well, two main reasons. First of all, you may even consider doubling the rooks along the d-file. You're covering a lot of squares on the queen side with that rook as well. Secondly, if black would consider to castle here, you have additional ideas of supporting the advance of your g-pawn, as the rook supports that march of the g-pawn. Rook c8 was played. Black decided not to castle here yet. But now anyway, the knight comes in to e5. That's an excellent square. Bishop went to b5, threatening the queen. Queen needs to keep in touch with that knight on e5. So it dropped back to e1. Black castles. And now finally the knight comes into the game. Very logical way of playing. And when you're looking at first at this position, you would think there's only one open file. Would be very logical if black would try to contest it, trying to exchange pieces to neutralize a potential attack. But this is not good. It was not played in the game, but I'm going to show you why. Now there is rook takes d8, rook takes d8, and black is missing its rook on f8 to guard the f7 pawn. There would follow knight takes f7 in that case. If you take with the king, it's queen takes e6, deadly battery of queen and bishop. If king goes back, queen f7 is checkmate. The king goes forward, you come in with your knight to e5 with check. You gotta go away, and then it's queen f5, king h8, knight to g6, check, king h7, knight f8, king h8. The reason I show you this is because in earlier videos I've explained to you the smothered mate, and you can see it in such variations as well. Queen h7, sacrificing the queen, and then at the end it's knight g6 with checkmate on the board. Didn't happen at all, but now you understand that black is not able to move its rook away from f8. So knight bd5 was played in the game. White went king b1, securing the king a bit more. The pawn is still well defended by the bishop. And now bishop c6 was played. Obviously, black was not really sure how to make progress. There are various ways now for white. You can come over with your rook to d4, but the d file is closed. You may consider attacking the queen, try to chase the queen away with rook c4. But Judit has a very clear, aggressive attacking style. Doesn't have the idea of centralizing the rook. No, she played here the move queen to d2. And I like it a lot, because now together with a rook, you're looking at this pawn on h6, and your idea is to go rook to h1, to double on the h file and look for possible ways of removing that annoying pawn on h6. Black is still okay if you would find here the move knight e7. That's not an easy move to find at all, but the knight is looking to come to f5, targeting the rook and giving some additional support to the pawn on h6. That would be a difficult maneuver to find. It was not played in the game. Rook f e8 was played, so that now after rook d to h1, black is still able to defend against potential threats. For instance, if you ignore anything, you go for the move a5, it's rook takes h6, sacrificing the rook, g takes, queen takes h6, and on the next move, it's going to be checkmate on h8, thanks to this rook on h1. So black's idea, rather than playing a random move, is explained now that the queen comes back to f8, overprotecting the pawn on h6. And now rook sacrifices, they are less impressive because the queen is very close to offer 8 to the king. Second idea of white's play here is to go for the move g4, planning to go g5. There's this hook, you would like to remove the pawn, and if you can attack the knight and the pawn at the same time, it will be very difficult to keep the files closed. So black went for knight e4, attacking the queen. Queen went back to e1. Very subtle move. You could have gone to many other squares. You're attacking the knight, but there's an additional advantage having the queen on e1, which you're going to see very soon. Now, it's not really like you're planning to take the knight yet. If you play a random move, let's say you go a5, if you take now on e4 the knight, it's knight c3. With a discovered check, b takes c3, you're winning the queen. But white's idea is that you can get rid of that bishop on c6 first. Knight takes c6, take on c6 with the rook, for instance, and now queen takes e4. White is a piece up. So that means knight is hanging. The knight went back to d6, but it doesn't stop the g-pawn. The knight is far away from defense, and white does get a chance to challenge the pawn on h6. If you take on g5, it's checkmate on h8. Fantastic doubling of the rooks. Black's idea was to come in with the knight to f5, but this should have done way earlier, as I've explained already. Now, the knight is attacking the rook. Would you go away with the rook? Judith would never do that. She has the possibility to open the king side. Takes on h6. Difficult choice here for black. Are you going to take the material with knight takes h4 or try to keep it close with knight takes h6? Well then, at least the pawn is no longer there. White would go for knight to g4, tickling the knight on h6. The knight cannot go away because of the mating threat, and otherwise we are just going to take on h6 anyway. So white took on h6, as I said, and black decided to take the rook. Now, you've sacrificed material, and there are various ways of continuing. You can take on g7, try to open up the h-file before recapturing. You can recapture straight away, but Judith is also looking first at forcing moves. Played move h7, remarkable idea. Of course, if you do take the pawn, it's rook takes h4, check, king cannot go forward, should go back, and now we understand why the queen is on e1. As queen h1 is there, with the idea of giving mate. If you play g6, rook h8, you are winning at least the queen, and the attack is still going on. So that's something black should avoid. Black is not interested in taking the pawn on h7. And in a lot of attacking games, you see that the opponent's king of black, in this case, is trying to hide in front of that pawn on h7. And that could be a great defensive weapon, because for now the rook on h1 cannot give a check. So the pawn on h7 is sort of working against white. But knight takes h4 is there, and this is fantastic. This is a very original attacking concept, because if black is going to play a random move, white's idea is to give knight g6 check. You got to take with the f pawn, and then it's knight takes g6 with checkmate, thanks to the pawn on h7, which is now supported by the rook. So here we see fantastic cooperation of the two knights with a huge mating threat to give two checks on g6 with both knights. So here the move knight f4 was played, and the knight is controlling the g6 square. So white's idea doesn't work at the moment. But look what Judith played here. This is definitely the key moment of the game. Probably something the black player didn't see in advance. Maybe you also don't see it yet. But give yourself a bit of time to figure out what is the best move. I would like to see you finding it. The queen on f8 is a very important defender. And with the move queen b4, you can deflect the queen. The point is that if you take, now knight takes f7 is not checkmate yet because of king takes h7. And there's no good discovered check with your knight. So don't do that. But what you can do instead is first move your knight away from h4 so that your rook is protecting the pawn on h7. Now after knight takes g6, there is knight takes f7, and it's checkmate. Excellent. In the game there followed the move g5. Now after g5, the queen comes into d4 with a deadly discovered threat, checkmate. So if you play f6, there's knight g6, knight takes, and it's game over. You're winning the queen. Instead, black played here the move king g7. A lot of interesting moves are there. At least if you move the knight away, let's say knight g6, it's not double check. Now maybe black can still try to put up some resistance with the move e5. So therefore, it's probably better to start with the move Judith played. Knight f5 check, beautiful check, sacrificing the knight with the point that the rook is supporting the pawn on h7. After e takes f5, the point is that you have various ways of playing. h8 queen was the move played in the game, deflecting the black queen. Black captured on h8, and now after knight takes f7, it's a discovered check. If the king goes away, it's knight takes h8. You're winning the queen. You grab all the material. It's just game over. So therefore, after knight takes f7, black had seen enough and resigned. I thought this was a very impressive attacking game. I hope you really liked it. Thanks for watching. And soon you will see more exciting stuff if you subscribe to the channel. Bye bye.